It's 7 o'clock. This is Bob Steele.
In the land of the free.
Good evening, this is Dick Bertel.
Gail King, Eyewitness News.
Good evening, I'm Denise DeSenza.
I'm Dennis House. Thanks for joining us.
Almost 20 years ago, 1998, the Patriots announced they would move to a new state-of-the-art stadium complex in Hartford. The owners, the Crafts, talked about their commitment to Connecticut.
We hope to become very involved in the greater Hartford and Connecticut philanthropy.
You're going to have tens of thousands of people, not just for football, but for the concerts and the soccer and all the other events, coming from all over New England to Hartford, experiencing its rejuvenation.
It still hurts to watch that, doesn't it, gentlemen? Yes. That the team was going to move and they did not. All right, with us today, our panel of pundits to talk about the governor's race. Franklin Perry, he's an attorney from Hartford, also works for the state legislature. And Brian Mongelluzzo, he's an attorney from Waterbury and has been talked about as a potential candidate. And you too, Franklin. Down the road, you never know who's going to run for Faces Day. First of all, I want to ask you, from a Democratic point of view, Themis Claret is deciding she's not going to run. There must have been a big sigh of relief because she was the big name in the Republican race who decided not to run.
Sure. Themis is obviously a tremendous leader for the Republican House members. She obviously has a lot of knowledge of the legislative process, of the legislature, of the executive branch for the time that she spent in office. And her decision to not run is probably very calculated. I think it's a very difficult decision for her. But I think at the end of the day, she values the work that's done in the House and in the legislature. And she realizes that we're in a pivotal crisis right now in the state. And she can be a pivotal part and a player in making some decisions for structural change that are coming to the state of Connecticut.
And Brian, I know a lot of Republicans were disappointed she didn't run because she was a big name, a woman. She could have, by all accounts, done fairly well.
Yeah, I mean, really our biggest name, Dennis, really from the state level. And as you correctly said, in the year of the woman, where real change can be affected and where people are looking for that change, really disappointing that she doesn't run. Certainly understand the reasons behind it. We're certainly happy to have her where she is because she can do great work. But again, it is a disappointment for us.
You guys are veterans of these races. We don't really have a clear front runner on either side for Democrats or Republicans. I guess on the Democratic side, Ned Lamont is the biggest name who's running right now, and he's got some electoral success in terms of beating Joe Lieberman in the primary back in 2006. Are you surprised that there's no real front runner yet?
I'm not surprised, Dennis, and I think this process is something that needs to play out. And there's going to be a natural attrition, given that we now have, on both sides, over 20 candidates who potentially nominate themselves to be gubernatorial candidates. I think each candidate is going to have to come out with a vision, and a vision that they can execute, articulate, and really provide some predictability for the voters. Once that happens, I think there'll be a natural, again, attrition of candidates, and then we eventually will see who weeds themselves out and who can be a front runner.
You come from one of the big cities in the state, Waterbury. Everyone wants to carry Waterbury in the election. So with 11 Republicans, you're going to be hearing from a lot of those Republicans who are already running. Do you think that field's too big?
I don't think it's too big, not right now anyway, early on in the process. And like Franklin says, I think it's a good thing to have many people in the process. It gives us more choices. It offers a greater debate and a wider debate. Eventually the herd will thin itself, and then we'll have our real choices. The good thing from our perspective is that the ideas are out there, and we have very intelligent people both working for us diligently now and people who are putting their names out there. These people can get the job done for us, Dennis. We've got to give them the opportunity to do that, and they've got to give us what we need to hear so that we can elect them. Waterbury
has a Democratic mayor, but it has gone Republican in years past. Hartford, mostly Democrat, has been Democratic for many years. Is Governor Malloy, he tends not to be popular in some of the statewide polls. Is he popular in Hartford still?
The governor I believe, has the support of the Hartford delegation, all of Hartford voters. I think he has made a conscious effort to invest in the capital city and make sure that Hartford remains a viable capital city.
So people aren't demanding change in Hartford like they are in other places?
I think that is true. I think people recognize the challenges that existed in the city, and if you've seen, if you follow the news, Hartford went through some struggles where we're going to potentially look at bankruptcy being an option for us. I think the governor made it a priority for him to make sure that the city remained solvent and had some options in which they could kind of continue to fund our pensions and our services, because he believes in urban centers and he certainly believes in the capital city.
What do people want to see from the next governor in Waterbury?
In Waterbury, we want people to listen to us. Obviously, we're a big city. We've been through our fair share of challenges in Waterbury, and even though Waterbury is heavily Democratic, it does swing to the Republican side many times. And Waterbury are free and independent thinkers. We have a great city, a vibrant city, even though we're still kind of on the way back. We want people to listen, Dennis. That's what we need.
You know, it seems like Republicans out there are saying, you know, we're going to do successfully, you know, perform successfully this year because of Governor Malloy's unpopularity. Democrats, on the other hand, are saying it's going to be Trump. He's going to be the drag for the Republicans. So let's talk about that for a little bit. How do people feel about President Trump in the city of Hartford? And do you think that he'll be a factor in the governor's race?
I think it's no secret that generally in urban centers around this country, there's a high sensitivity to the vitriol and some of the messaging that comes from the White House currently with our currently sitting president. With that said, I think there's a recognition that there are going to be some trends and that people can use the elective process to voice their displeasure with what's happening in Washington, particularly in the president's office.
When they go into the ballot booth, you know, the ballot box in November, are they going to pick a Republican because they're just done with Governor Malloy? Or do you think they'll go Democrat because, you know what, I just really don't like President Trump?
Yeah, it's really hard to determine, Dennis. The reason why I say that is because Waterbury, again, are independent thinkers, and it's whatever person shows themselves to be the best candidate. Certainly President Trump's approval rating is not the greatest. Governor Malloy's is even less than that. But the problem I think that we're having as a state and maybe even as a nation is there's too much negativity. We've got very successful people in the House right now. We've got intelligent people there. We have intelligent people running for office. We've got to give them the opportunity to be heard, and then we can make that decision. So it's anybody's guess as to who the voters vote for in Waterbury.
I want to get your opinion on the discussion we had just before you, and that was on tolls and a higher gas tax. Now, a lot of people are like, another tax. How's that going to go over?
I think people need to be made aware of the urgency that is necessary to fund our special transportation fund. You know, in 2 years, we have the opportunity where the fund will be insolvent. You know, in 3 years, they say there's going to be a debt service spike of 37%, and in 5 years, it could escalate to as high as 76%. So how do you find revenues to kind of offset some of the debts that we're going to owe that are going to be bore by the Connecticut payers, the state taxpayers? You get to look at revenues. So if tolls is a viable option, and if a plan, a comprehensive plan, which doesn't just impact towns that are on the borders, is put in place where I think Connecticut residents are given predictability and transparency about a plan that's going to allow us to alleviate the potential damages that are going to affect the Special Transportation Fund, I think is a viable option.
We don't know where a lot of these tolls are going to be, but years ago we did have them in Hartford. They were on the Founders Bridge, the Bulkley Bridge, as you were coming into the city. A lot of people, as you know, because I live in Hartford as well, don't want to spend money on parking and things like that. Will a toll coming into the city hurt the city?
I do not think that tolls coming into the city will impact people's decisions to still get on roads. You know, I hear a lot of arguments that people will find other ways to divert themselves around tolls. If you look at congestion pricing, if you look at ways to offset the costs that might be borne by Connecticut residents, I think there's a viable way to put tolls in proper places, such as urban centers, where people are willing to pay certain needs for investments that are going to receive a long-term benefit.
What do you think about tolls in Waterbury?
Tolls in Waterbury probably go over like a lead balloon, another tax. We talk about looking at revenue, and I think that's an important thing, but we've also got to talk about looking at spending and ways to cut spending. Look, tolls are kind of a fact of life. Anywhere up and down the East Coast, you have them. Most people I know have an easy pass in their car. So will people sort of gripe about it and eventually accept it? Most likely. But the idea for more taxes doesn't go over very well in an election year.
Gentlemen, we thank you for your insight and your analysis on this Sunday morning. Franklin Perry of Hartford and Brian Mongelluzzo of Waterbury. Gentlemen, thank you very much for being on Face the State.
Thank you.
And enjoy watching some football a little bit later on. We thank you so much for watching Face the State on this Sunday. I'll see you next Sunday for another edition of Connecticut's most watched local political program, and I'll see you tomorrow on the news.